Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets the stars might hold? Across countless generations, human beings have gazed into the heavens with a deep, almost primal curiosity, searching for meaning, for connection, for something greater than ourselves. And as it turns out, we weren't alone in that search. Ancient civilizations across the globe believed the cosmos was not just a spectacle to admire, but a source of immense, tangible energy, a force that could be understood, channeled, and even harnessed. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of the Maya, our ancestors built structures and developed rituals aimed at aligning with the rhythms of the universe. Yet few cultures pursued this cosmic connection as boldly, as mysteriously, or as reverently as the Inca Empire. Hidden high in the Andes, surrounded by jagged peaks and thin, rarefied air that seems to bring the sky within reach, the Inca developed spiritual technologies so advanced, so precise, that they still baffle archaeologists and historians today. They didn't just observe the stars, they communicated with them. They designed their cities, their ceremonies, and their very way of life around the movements of the sun, the moon, and the constellations. At the heart of their belief system was the idea that cosmic energy wasn't abstract or distant. It was alive, flowing through everything: the mountains, the rivers, the plants, and the people. And with the right knowledge and the courage to use it, that energy could be drawn into our world. What you're about to discover goes far beyond myth or speculation. We're venturing into the world of forbidden Inca rituals, secret, sacred practices so powerful that speaking of them was once punishable by death. These were ceremonies designed not just to honor the gods, but to actively harvest energy from the cosmos itself. Through precise astronomical alignments, offerings of unimaginable value, and rites performed in total secrecy, Inca priests and priestesses attempted something extraordinary: to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine, to pull power from the stars and infuse it into their empire. This is the story of how one of history's greatest civilizations tried to tap into the very fabric of the universe, and why so much of their celestial knowledge remains shrouded in mystery even now. To truly grasp how the Inca sought to harness the energy of the universe, we must first step into their world, a world profoundly different from our own. For the Inca, reality was not a single, flat plane of existence, but a living, breathing entity composed of three interconnected realms, each with its own distinct energy and consciousness. This wasn't just a spiritual idea, it was the very architecture of their universe, a cosmological map that guided every aspect of their lives, from farming to warfare, and most importantly, their sacred rituals. The highest realm was Pacha, the upper world. This was the celestial domain of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the great deities like Inti, the sun god, and Illapa, the god of thunder. Pacha was the source of all creative, life-giving force. It represented order, light, and the future. The energy that flowed from this realm was considered pure, potent, and divine. Then there was Pacha, the world we inhabit, translating to this world, or the world of the here and now. Pacha was the tangible plane of existence, the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, and all living things. It was a place of constant interaction and balance, a meeting point where the energies from the upper and lower worlds converged and interacted. Life in Pacha was about maintaining this delicate equilibrium. Beneath it all lay Pacha, the inner world or the underworld. Far from being a place of simple darkness or evil, as in some other mythologies, Pacha was the source of fertility, the origin of water springs, and the home of ancestors and agricultural deities like Mama Kocha, the mother of the seas. It represented the past, the subconscious, and the raw, untamed potential of the earth itself. The energy from Pacha was generative and foundational. The genius of Inca spirituality was in their understanding that these three realms were not separate. They were in a constant, dynamic conversation, and energy flowed between them. A mountain peak or a pu piercing the clouds was a sacred junction point, a physical conduit reaching into Hanan Pacha. A spring or a cave was an opening into Uku Pacha. Their entire landscape was dotted with these portals known as huacas. The ultimate goal of their rituals, therefore, was to facilitate this exchange, to draw down the ordering, vitalizing energy from the heavens while simultaneously drawing up the fertile, generative power from the earth, converging both within K-Pacha to nourish and sustain their empire. This tripartite universe was the blueprint for their energy harvesting. A ritual wasn't just a ceremony, it was a technical operation designed to open these channels. When a high priest performed a ceremony at the summit of a mountain during a solstice, he was acting as a living conductor, using his knowledge and the precise alignment of the stones around him to pull cosmic energy from Hanan Pacha into the earthly realm. An offering of chicha, a sacred corn beer, poured into a spring was a deliberate act of reciprocity, sending energy back into Uku Pacha to ensure the continued flow of water and fertility. Every ritual, no matter how large or small, was a conscious effort to participate in this eternal cycle of energy exchange, ensuring the harmony and prosperity of their entire world. But it wasn't enough to simply understand the flow of energy between these three worlds. The Inca developed a highly sophisticated system to map and manage this cosmic current across their entire empire. At the heart of this system was their capital, Cusco, which was not just a political center but the very navel of the universe, a spiritual powerhouse designed to concentrate and distribute energy. From this sacred heart, the Inca engineered an astonishing network of invisible lines known as the ceque system. Imagine it as a vast spiritual blueprint superimposed onto the physical landscape, 41 precise lines or ceques radiating out from the Coricancha, the magnificent temple of the sun in central Cusco. Each of these lines was a carefully surveyed pathway of power connecting hundreds of individual huacas or sacred places. These huacas were far more than just landmarks. A huaca could be a natural spring, an oddly shaped and revered rock, a mountain peak, a tomb of an ancestor, or even a purpose-built shrine. Each one served as a kind of spiritual capacitor, a node designed to receive, store, and emit energy. The ceque lines that connected them functioned like ley lines, acting as conduits for the cosmic and terrestrial forces the priests sought to harness. The entire system was a breathtakingly complex and precise grid, meticulously maintained by specific noble lineages and priesthoods. Each ceque was assigned to a particular social group, who were responsible for performing specific rituals and offerings at the huacas along their line at precisely the right times, creating a perpetual, empire-wide ceremony that hummed with spiritual activity. This wasn't an abstract concept, it was a practical, functional technology for managing the life force of the empire. The scheduling of these rituals was intrinsically tied to the celestial calendar. The movement of the sun, moon, and stars dictated when energy was believed to be most potent and accessible at different points in the network. A ritual performed at a mountaintop huaca during the winter solstice, for example, was designed to pull the weakening sun's energy back into the world, ensuring its return and the subsequent rebirth of spring. The flow of water from a high-altitude spring, channeled through aqueducts that often followed these sacred pathways, was seen as the literal manifestation of energy flowing from Hanan Pacha through the ceque system and into the farmlands of K-Pacha to nourish the crops. The ultimate purpose of this sacred geography was to bind the empire together not just physically, but energetically. Just as the nervous system carries signals from the brain to every extremity of the body, the ceque system was believed to carry the life-giving and order-imposing energy from the cosmic heart in Cusco to the farthest reaches of Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters. It was the ultimate expression of the Inca worldview, a living, breathing empire sustained by a conscious, managed flow of power from the heavens above and the earth below, all channeled through the sacred stones, springs, and peaks they so revered. At the very center of this sprawling spiritual network sat its ultimate power source, the Coricancha, or the Golden Enclosure. This was far more than just a temple. It was the grand central station for the entire empire's cosmic energy grid, the most sacred site in the entire Inca world. To stand within its walls was to stand at the convergence point of all three realms. While the ceque lines spread the energy outwards, the Coricancha was where it was first concentrated, amplified, and prepared for distribution. The sheer ambition of its design reveals just how advanced the Inca understanding of celestial mechanics truly was. The architecture of the Coricancha was its first and most brilliant layer of spiritual technology. The entire structure was a meticulously calibrated instrument, engineered to interact directly with the sun. Its walls were famously sheathed in heavy plates of solid gold, not merely as a display of wealth, but because the Inca believed gold to be the sweat of the sun, a physical substance imbued with Inti's very essence. This wasn't just decoration, it was a functional component. The priests understood that these polished gold surfaces acted as colossal reflectors and amplifiers, catching the first and last rays of the sun and flooding the interior courtyard with an intense, concentrated light. They believed this amplified light carried the sun's life force, its energy, and the temple was designed to capture and hold that vibration within its sacred space. But the true genius of the Coricancha lay in its precise astronomical alignments. The main entrance was perfectly oriented so that on the June solstice, the rising sun would stream directly through the door, striking a specially designed niche lined with gold that held a sacred idol. This event wasn't just a symbolic celebration, it was a critical moment of energetic harvest. The Inca priests believed that at this precise moment, the veil between Honan Pacha and K Pacha was at its thinnest, and the sun's power was at its most potent and accessible. The temple, with its golden walls and perfect geometry, was designed to capture this influx of cosmic energy like a capacitor storing a charge, preventing it from dissipating back into the heavens. Inside, the temple complex was divided into several dedicated chambers, each honoring a different celestial body and harnessing its unique energy. There was a silver enclosure for the moon, a room dedicated to the stars, and another for Ilapa, the thunder god. Each of these chambers likely had its own specific alignments and ceremonial functions, fine-tuning the energy being drawn from different parts of the cosmos. The central courtyard housed a field of intricately crafted gold cornstalks, a powerful symbolic act that represented the direct channeling of solar energy into the agricultural bounty that sustained the empire. The entire complex was a living machine, its priests the skilled operators who knew how to use its alignments and offerings to maintain a constant, beneficial flow of power from the heavens, through Cusco, and out along the ceque lines to energize and stabilize their entire world. Yet the energy they sought to control was not solely celestial in origin. To complete the circuit and truly anchor the sun, the ritual had to connect all three realms of existence. This is where offerings came into play, often involving the pouring of sacred liquids like chicha onto the stone itself. This act served a profound dual purpose. The liquid, drawn from the earth, represented the generative power of Uku Pacha. As it flowed over the intricately carved channels and basins of the Intihuatana, it created a physical and spiritual connection between the underworld and the heavens. The priests believed that the stone, now activated by the sun's rays, would supercharge this offering, infusing the liquid with celestial energy before it seeped back into the earth, thereby fertilizing the entire world with the combined power of the cosmos and the underworld. The Intihuatana was the ultimate tool of balance, a device that didn't just capture energy but actively facilitated its flow through every layer of reality, ensuring the continued harmony and vitality of the Inca world. The timing of these rituals was everything. The Inca priests possessed an intimate and precise knowledge of the cosmos, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and stars with a sophistication that still commands respect. Their calendar wasn't just a way to mark days. It was a sacred schedule that pinpointed the exact moments when the veil between worlds was believed to be at its thinnest, and cosmic energy was at its most accessible and potent. The solstices and equinoxes were not mere seasonal markers, but were viewed as critical portals, moments of immense power where the balance of energy across the three realms of Honenpacha, K-Pacha, and Uku-Pacha could be directly influenced. The most significant of these events was the June solstice, known as Inti Raymi. This was the moment the sun god Inti was at his weakest, and the entire empire held its breath, willing his return. The ceremony was a grand, empire-wide effort to literally pull the sun's energy back into the world. It began days in advance with a period of fasting and purification for the high priests. As the sun began its descent on the solstice eve, the atmosphere in sacred spaces like the Coricancha or atop Machu Picchu's Intihuatana would grow thick with anticipation. The Sapa Inca, the emperor himself believed to be a direct descendant of Inti, would lead the proceedings surrounded by the highest order of priests. They would not simply wait for the sunrise, they would actively call it forth. As the first sliver of light broke over the horizon, a meticulously orchestrated sequence began. The priests, having spent the night in silent vigil, would begin a low, resonant chant, a specific harmonic frequency passed down through generations. This wasn't just singing, it was a form of sonic technology. They believed the vibrations of these ancient chants, combined with the precise angle of the rising sun, would resonate with the very fabric of the cosmos, stabilizing the sun's path and locking its energy into the earthly realm. Their body positions were just as crucial. They would stand with arms outstretched, palms facing the sun, not in worship, but as living conduits. This posture was designed to maximize the surface area exposed to the sun's first rays, allowing their bodies to absorb the initial, most potent wave of cosmic energy. They acted as the first point of contact, grounding the celestial force before channeling it into the waiting earth through the sacred stones beneath their feet. The offerings made during these alignments were acts of profound reciprocity. The principle of Aini, or sacred reciprocity, was central to all Inca life. You could not simply take energy from the cosmos, you had to give something of immense value in return. For a solstice ceremony, this often involved the sacrifice of a perfect, unblemished llama. Its blood, considered the ultimate life-giving essence, was carefully collected and offered to the sun. But perhaps the most powerful offerings were those that represented the essence of the empire itself. Exquisitely crafted gold and silver figurines representing llamas, corn, and human forms were presented. These weren't merely valuable commodities, they were symbolic containers. The gold, as the sweat of the sun, was returning a piece of his own essence to Inti, a powerful gesture of gratitude and connection. The silver, tied to the moon, acknowledged the balance of celestial forces. The energy harvested during these brief astronomical windows was believed to be so concentrated that it had to be carefully managed and distributed. Following the main ceremony, priests would carry sacred flames, lit from the sun's first rays, to temples and hearths throughout the city. This was not just symbolic fire, it was seen as tangible solar energy, now tamed and available to warm homes, purify spaces, and fuel the spiritual life of the community for the coming year. The entire ritual was a breathtakingly complex operation, part astronomy, part resonant acoustic science, and part deep spiritual ecology, all aimed at sustaining the very life of their world by consciously engaging with the rhythms of the universe. For the Inca, gold was far more than a symbol of status or wealth. It was a sacred substance, a tangible piece of the divine itself. They called it the sweat of the sun, believing it was formed from the very essence of Inti, the sun god, as he traveled across the sky. This wasn't a poetic metaphor, it was a fundamental scientific and spiritual truth in their worldview. Because gold originated from the celestial realm of Honenpacha, it was understood to possess a unique property, the innate ability to conduct, attract, and amplify cosmic energy. This belief turned every ounce of gold in the empire into a potential spiritual tool, a piece of technology designed to interface with the powers of the universe. This sacred metal was integrated into every aspect of their most important rituals. The walls of the Coricancha were sheathed in heavy plates of polished gold to catch and reflect the first light of the solstice sun, flooding the temple's interior with what they perceived as concentrated solar energy. Priests wore elaborate golden pectorals and headdresses not merely for display, but to turn their own bodies into conduits during ceremonies. They became living antennas adorned with the sun's own substance, better able to channel the immense forces they were calling down. Ritual objects, from ceremonial knives known as tumis to exquisite vessels for holding chicha, were crafted from gold because it was believed the metal would purify and energize any offering it contained, transforming a simple liquid into a potent elixir charged with celestial power. The process of creating these sacred objects was a ritual in itself, a secret art known only to a specialized class of smiths who were as much priests as they were artisans. The journey began at the source with the selection of ore. Not just any gold was suitable, it had to be gathered from specific sacred riverbeds or mines, places where the energy of Uku Pacha, the underworld, was thought to be strong, creating a metal that was a perfect fusion of celestial and terrestrial power. The smelting process was conducted with meticulous ceremony. Furnaces were often positioned to capture the light of the rising or setting sun, and prayers were chanted continuously throughout the purification process. The smiths weren't just removing physical impurities, they were believed to be guiding the metal back to its pure, primordial solar state, awakening its latent conductive properties. The final and most crucial step was the charging of the finished object. A newly cast golden vase or statue was not yet considered active. It had to be intentionally infused with energy, a process that required precise celestial timing. The object would be placed in a specific location within a temple like the Coricancha or atop a sacred huaca on a mountain peak, positioned so that it would be struck by the first rays of the sun on a significant day, such as a solstice or equinox. As the sunlight hit the polished gold surface, priests would perform chanting and breathwork, using their own focused intention to essentially switch on the object's spiritual circuitry. They believed that in that moment a circuit was completed, energy flowed from the sun, through the metal and into the earthly realm, and the object became a permanent battery for that cosmic force, ready to be used in ceremonies to nourish the empire and maintain the balance of the world. While gold and offerings were powerful conduits for energy, the Inca believed the most potent force in the universe was the human life force itself. To complete the most critical circuits of power, to stabilize the empire during times of crisis, or to appease the gods after a catastrophic event like an earthquake or famine, a more profound exchange was required. This led to the most solemn and controversial of all Inca rituals, the capacocha. This was not an act of wanton violence, but a deeply spiritual and state-sanctioned ceremony viewed as the ultimate act of reciprocity and the highest honor a family could receive. The children selected for the capacocha were chosen with extreme care. They were not victims but revered participants, often the most beautiful, physically perfect, and spiritually pure children from across the empire's 4 quarters. Their selection was a tremendous honor for their entire ilu or community. These children were seen as unblemished vessels, their life force undiluted and their connection to the divine completely clear. In the months leading up to the ceremony, their lives were transformed. They were brought to Cusco, often dressed in fine textiles and adorned with gold and silver, and treated as living embodiments of the sacred. They were feasted and honored, their every need attended to. This process was a form of spiritual preparation, a way to further purify and elevate their essence, making them an offering of unparalleled value to the gods. The journey to the ritual site was itself a sacred pilgrimage. The child, accompanied by a procession of priests, nobility, and attendants, would travel sometimes for weeks to the summit of a sacred mountain, an apu believed to be a direct gateway to Honenpacha. The higher the altitude, the closer they were to the celestial realm. At these breathtaking heights, often over 20,000 feet, the air is thin and the sky feels intensely present. The final ceremony was conducted with great reverence. Archaeological evidence from mummies discovered on these peaks shows that the children were often given a mild sedative, like chicha mixed with other substances, to ease their passing. They were then placed in a seated, resting position within a carefully prepared tomb, surrounded by exquisite offerings, miniature gold and silver figurines, fine pottery, and elaborate textiles. The theological principle behind the Coricancha was one of perfect energy exchange. The Inca believed the cosmos operated on a fundamental law of balance. To receive immense power, one must offer something of equal value. A human life, especially that of a pure, innocent child, was considered the most valuable offering possible. By willingly returning this perfect life force to the gods, the Inca were not merely asking for favor. They were engaging in a transaction they believed was essential for the world's stability. The energy released by the child's spirit passing into the cosmic realm was thought to flow directly into the mountain, supercharging the apu as a spiritual capacitor. This newly energized mountain would then radiate that power outward, stabilizing the ceque lines, ensuring the sun would return after the solstice, prompting the rains to fall, and guaranteeing the fertility of the land and the continuity of the empire. The child became a permanent, deified guardian, a bridge between humanity and the divine, ensuring a continuous flow of cosmic energy for generations to come. Beyond the grand stone calendars and solar alignments, the Inca also cultivated a deeply intimate and internal pathway to the cosmos through the sacred use of psychotropic plants. For the priests and shamans known as hamata, the physical world was merely one layer of a far richer reality. To truly communicate with the spirit world and channel its energy, they needed to journey beyond the limits of ordinary perception. This was achieved through a profound and carefully controlled relationship with master-teacher plants, primarily the potent vilca tree and the visionary San Pedro cactus. These were not substances of recreation. They were sacred technologies, keys that unlocked the doors of perception and allowed the shaman to voyage into the heart of the cosmic energy they sought to direct. The preparation of these plant medicines was a ritual in itself, steeped in reverence and intention. The San Pedro cactus, known as huachuma, contains mescaline and was often harvested under specific lunar cycles. Its thick, green flesh would be meticulously sliced and boiled for hours, even days, in a ceremonial pot, reducing it to a thick, bitter brew. The vilca tree, whose seeds contain powerful tryptamines like DMT and bufotenin, required even more precise handling. The seeds were painstakingly ground into a fine snuff, often mixed with alkaline ashes from other sacred plants to activate the compounds. This powder, called huulka or sebil, was then carefully stored in ornate snuff trays and tubes made of bone or wood, often carved with intricate cosmic symbols. Every step from harvesting to preparation was accompanied by prayers, chants, and offerings to the spirit of the plant itself, asking for its guidance and wisdom and ensuring the medicine was not just chemically active but spiritually awakened. When the time for the ceremony arrived, the setting was everything. These rituals were typically conducted in absolute darkness within secluded caves or specially designated temples, far from the distractions of the everyday world. The participants, usually just the shaman and perhaps a few initiates, would enter a state of purifying fasting beforehand. The shaman, acting as the experienced guide or pilot for the journey, would consume the brew or administer the snuff with a specific and solemn purpose, to fracture the illusion of separateness and achieve a state of unified consciousness. As the plant's spirit took hold, the shaman's awareness would detach from their physical body, which remained seated and grounded. Their consciousness, however, was now free to travel along the very ceque lines they mapped in the physical world, soaring to the celestial realm of Pacha or diving deep into the mysterious depths of Pacha. In this expanded state, the shaman became a living intermediary, a direct telephone line to the divine. They reported conversing with ancestor spirits, receiving prophecies, and diagnosing illnesses that were seen as imbalances in a person's energy body. But their most critical function was to act as a conduit for cosmic energy itself. They described perceiving the universe as a vast, luminous web of vibrating light and sound. Their role was to identify blockages or weaknesses in this web, whether in a person, a community, or the land itself, and then, using their intention, breath, and sacred songs called icaros, to channel healing energy from the cosmos into those areas to restore balance and flow. The plant medicine did not give them power, it simply cleared the static from their internal receiver, allowing them to perceive and work with energies that were always present but normally invisible. The intelligence gathered in these visionary states was considered absolutely vital to the empire's well-being. A shaman might return from a journey with a warning of an impending drought, instructions on where to build a new temple to correct an energetic imbalance, or a new healing melody to combat a spreading sickness. The information was practical, precise, and immediately integrated into the spiritual and administrative life of the community. This practice reveals a breathtakingly holistic worldview where altered states of consciousness were not an escape from reality, but a deeper engagement with its true energetic underpinnings. For the Inca, the shaman's journey was a necessary expedition into the invisible infrastructure of the universe, ensuring the continuous and harmonious flow of the cosmic energy that sustained all life. Yet the sun was not the only celestial body the Inca priests sought to commune with. Their gaze extended far beyond our solar system, into the deepest reaches of the galaxy. For them, the night sky was not a random scattering of lights, but a vast, living map and a complex energy grid. They understood that different constellations and star systems emitted distinct types of cosmic power, each with its own unique influence on the earthly realm. Their rituals, therefore, were finely tuned to the movements of these distant suns, with two celestial features holding paramount importance: the shimmering star cluster known as the Pleiades, which they called Colca, and the great river of light we know as the Milky Way, which they revered as Mayu. The Pleiades held a particularly vital place in Inca cosmology. They did not see this cluster as seven sisters, as in Greek myth, but as Colca, a celestial granary. Its annual appearance and disappearance from the night sky were the most important markers for the Andean agricultural cycle, even more so than the solstices. When the Pleiades rose heliacally, meaning they first became visible just before dawn after a period of being hidden by the sun's glare, the priests would perform a crucial ritual. They would carefully observe the cluster's clarity and brightness. If the stars appeared sharp and brilliant, it was interpreted as a sign that the celestial granary was full, predicting an abundant harvest. If they appeared dim or hazy, it foretold a poor season, a sign that the energy being emitted was weak. This wasn't mere superstition. It was based on keen astronomical observation, as the clarity of the Pleiades is indeed linked to meteorological conditions that affect crop yields. The ritual to harvest the energy of Colca was one of focused intention. Priests would gather at high-altitude observatories, their eyes fixed on the cluster as it crested the horizon. They believed the Pleiades emitted a specific frequency of energy that promoted fertility and growth. Through chanting and the use of polished black ceremonial bowls filled with water, they attempted to capture the starlight. The still water surface would act as a mirror, catching the faint light of the stars, and the bowl itself, made of stone from the earth, would ground that energy. The water, now believed to be infused with the fertile essence of Colca, would then be ceremonially sprinkled over the first sown seeds of the season, a direct transfer of celestial life force into the crops that would feed the empire. But the ultimate source of cosmic power, in their view, was the Milky Way. They saw this glowing band not as a far-off galaxy, but as a vast celestial river flowing across the dome of Hononpacha, the Mayu. This river was the primary source of all water on Earth. The rain that fell from the sky and the water that sprung from the ground were simply the earthly manifestations of this heavenly flow. The Milky Way's energy was considered the most primal and potent force, the creative substance from which all things were formed. The dark blotches within the Mayu, which we know are vast clouds of interstellar dust, were not empty spaces to the Inca. They saw these dark constellations as living, celestial animals. A llama, a serpent, a toad, a fox, each possessing its own unique spiritual influence and energy signature. The entire Inca spiritual practice was, in a profound way, an effort to align their earthly world with this heavenly river. Their own sacred Urubamba River in the valley below Cusco was considered a direct reflection of the Mayu on Earth. The ceque system radiating from the Coricancha was a mirror of the Milky Way's path across the sky. Major temples and huacas were positioned to align with the rising and setting points of the Mayu's bright center or its dark animal constellations throughout the year. A ritual performed at a temple aligned with the celestial llama when it was highest in the sky, for instance, was designed to draw down its nurturing, protective energy to bless the empire's vast herds of real llamas. The cosmic energy they sought to harvest was not a vague, singular force. It was a complex symphony of distinct frequencies, and the Inca priests were the master conductors, using the sacred landscape as their instrument to orchestrate a harmony between the heavens and the earth. These sacred peaks, the apus, were far more than just impressive features of the landscape. The Inca saw them as living, conscious beings, the ultimate earthly guardians and the most powerful antennas for cosmic energy in their entire world. An apu was a mountain of such immense size and presence that it seemed to physically pierce the veil between worlds. Its summit eternally bathed in the celestial light of Hononpacha, while its roots plunged deep into the generative darkness of Uku-Pacha. This unique position made each apu a colossal spiritual conduit, a naturally occurring power station where the energy of the cosmos could be most directly accessed and channeled. The higher and more dominant the mountain, the greater its power and influence was believed to be, with peaks like Osangate and Salcante serving as veritable kings in this divine mountainous court. The rituals performed on these summits were among the most demanding and sacred acts an Inca priest could undertake. The journey itself was a form of purification, a steep and arduous pilgrimage that took the participants far above the world of everyday life and into the rarefied air of the gods. With every step upward, they were leaving the familiar energy of Pacha behind and moving closer to the pure, undiluted power of the cosmos. The thin air, freezing temperatures, and howling winds were not seen as obstacles, but as tests of devotion and a clear sign they were entering a realm not meant for ordinary humans. Upon reaching the summit, the priests would find themselves in a breathtaking sanctuary of rock and sky, a place where the clouds moved below them and the stars felt close enough to touch. It was here, at this ultimate junction point, that they would perform their most potent ceremonies. The primary objective was to establish a connection, to essentially plug in to the mountain's immense energetic capacity. This often involved the construction of a small stone platform or the use of a natural rock formation that aligned with specific celestial events. During a solstice or the crucial rising of the Pleiades, the priests would position themselves to catch the first rays of light, using polished sheets of gold or mica as reflective tools to focus the energy onto a specific point. Their chanting at this altitude was different, focused on creating low, resonant harmonics that they believed would vibrate in tune with the mountain itself, awakening the apu's spirit and inviting it to participate in the ritual. They weren't just performing for the mountain, they were performing with it, acting as a conscious component in a vast natural circuit. offerings made to the apus were of the highest quality, reflecting the immense value the Inca placed on this relationship. While llamas were common sacrificial offerings, the most significant gifts were those that represented the essence of human creativity and devotion. Exquisitely crafted miniature figurines or canopas made of gold, silver, and precious spondylus shell were presented. These weren't mere trinkets, they were symbolic containers. A tiny gold llama was an offering of the entire empire's herds. A silver cornstalk represented all agricultural abundance. By offering these perfect miniature versions, the priests were giving the apu the spiritual blueprint for that entire aspect of life, asking the mountain spirit to nurture and protect it. The energy harvested from these high-altitude rituals was believed to be incredibly concentrated and potent. The apu would then act as a distributor, sending this refined cosmic power cascading down its slopes. The glaciers on its peaks were seen as frozen, stored celestial energy, which, as they melted, became the life-giving water that fed the rivers and irrigated the terraces below. The very stones that tumbled down its sides were thought to carry a residue of this power, which is why certain rocks from sacred mountains were themselves considered minor huacas. The apus were the linchpins of the entire system, the grand central receivers that gathered the raw power of the heavens and, through a sacred partnership with humanity, transformed it into the tangible forces of water, fertility, and stability that sustained the Inca world. This sophisticated understanding of water as a living energy conduit finds its most breathtaking expression in the Inca's hydraulic masterpieces, sites where engineering and spirituality merge into a single, flowing art form. While the apus channeled energy from the heavens, the Inca believed this power needed to be distributed, and for that they turned to the most fundamental element of life, water. They saw rivers and springs not merely as sources of hydration, but as the literal bloodstream of Pachamama, the Earth Mother. Water was the physical vehicle for the cosmic energy they harvested. It was the medium that carried the vibrations of the stars, the sun, and the sacred mountains down from the high peaks to nourish every field, home, and temple in the empire. At engineering marvels like Tepon and Moray, they didn't just build irrigation systems, they constructed vast, intricate networks for energizing the entire landscape. Take Tepon, for example, a site often called the pinnacle of Inca hydraulic engineering. Perched on a steep mountainside, it is a complex series of perfectly leveled agricultural terraces fed by a natural spring located at the highest point. But a closer look reveals something far more profound than simple farming. The spring itself was enclosed within an exquisitely crafted stone sanctuary, a huaca that marked it as a sacred point of emergence, a place where the life-giving waters of Uku Pacha, the inner world, flowed into K Pacha. The water wasn't just collected, it was ceremonially welcomed into the human world. From there, the Inca engineers designed a network of stone channels and canals that are a masterpiece of precision and control. The water doesn't rush turbulently down the steep incline. Instead, it is guided through a series of graceful curves, cascades, and fountains that arate it and, in the Inca worldview, activate it. The design was intentional. The movement of the water over specific types of stone through carefully calculated turns and down small waterfalls was believed to infuse it with kinetic energy and cosmic vibrations. The priests understood that moving water structured itself in specific ways, and by designing the channels to create optimal flow, they were essentially programming the water, charging it with the specific energetic signature needed for growth and vitality. As this activated water then flowed across the terraces, it didn't just irrigate the crops, it was thought to transfer this charged energy directly into the soil and the plants themselves. The entire complex functioned like a massive battery charger, with the terraces acting as capacitors, storing this spiritually supercharged water to continuously feed energy into the crops of corn, quinoa, and potatoes that grew there. The site of Moray presents an even more fascinating and enigmatic example. often mistaken for a simple agricultural research station, its true purpose likely delves much deeper into the mystical. Moray consists of several enormous natural depressions in the earth that have been sculpted into concentric circular terraces, creating a breathtaking series of bowls descending deep into the ground. The temperature difference between the top and bottom terrace can be as much as 27 degrees Fahrenheit, creating a series of unique microclimates. But the most sophisticated feature is, once again, its water system. Ingenious underground channels and hydraulic valves allowed the priests to precisely control the water level at each different terrace, effectively turning the entire site into a massive resonant chamber. The prevailing theory among many researchers is that Moray was less about cultivating crops and more about cultivating energy. The circular, descending form mirrors the Inca conception of the cosmos itself, with the deepest point representing Huacas. By flooding these terraces with water channeled from distant glaciers, water that had already flowed down from sacred apus and was thus pre-charged with celestial energy, the priests could create a massive, still body of water. In the utter stillness and silence of these deep bowls, they could perform rituals to communicate with the ancestral spirits of the underworld. The precise control of water levels would alter the acoustics of the space, potentially creating specific resonant frequencies for chanting. The entire site might have functioned as a colossal tuning fork, designed to vibrate in harmony with the earth and the cosmos, using water as its medium to generate and stabilize energy for the entire surrounding region. These weren't just temples built near water. They were temples built of water, where the liquid flow itself was the primary sacred technology for connecting the three realms and sustaining the empire. But physical structures and plant medicines were not the only tools the Inca used to commune with the cosmos. They understood that the very air around them could be shaped into a powerful conduit for energy. The principle was simple yet profound. Everything in the universe vibrates, from the smallest stone to the largest star, and by matching those vibrations, one could achieve resonance, a state of perfect harmony and connection. For the Inca priest, sound was not merely something to be heard. It was a tangible force to be sculpted and directed, a precise technology for tuning the spiritual frequency of a place and its people to the rhythm of the heavens. This sonic science was applied with incredible intention through the use of specific, sacred instruments. The most iconic was the pututu, a conch shell trumpet whose deep, resonant blast was far more than a signal. Its spiral form was seen as a physical representation of the cosmic energy they sought to channel, and its sound was believed to carry that twisting, vortical power. A pututu's call, echoing across a sacred valley at dawn, was not just announcing a ceremony. It was actively clearing the energetic atmosphere, using its low-frequency vibration to disperse stagnant energy and create a purified space for ritual. Similarly, finely crafted panpipes or antaras were not played for casual melody. Each pipe was tuned to a specific frequency that corresponded to a different celestial body or natural element. When played together in a specific sequence, the harmonies were designed to create a sonic lattice, a vibrating framework in the air that would attract and hold the specific cosmic energy they were invoking. However, the most sophisticated instrument was always the human voice itself. The priests and chosen women, the huacas, spent years mastering a form of overtone chanting, learning to project two distinct pitches simultaneously, a deep, fundamental drone from the chest and a high, flute-like harmonic from the head. This wasn't a performance, it was a form of bioresonance. They believed this dual-toned singing allowed them to literally straddle two worlds. The low tone would resonate with the energy of Huacas, the earthly and underworld realm, grounding the ceremony, while the high harmonic would vibrate in sympathy with the high-frequency energy of Hononpacha, the celestial world. The chanter became a living bridge, their vocal cords acting as strings that tuned the space around them to the frequency of the cosmos. The location for these sonic rituals was critically important. They were often conducted in naturally resonant spaces that acted as amplifiers, narrow canyon passages, specific caves with exceptional acoustics, or inside temples with precisely angled stone walls that created a phenomenon known as a whispering gallery, where a soft chant could be heard clearly on the opposite side of the chamber. At a site like the cave beneath the Taurian temple at Machu Picchu, a single note hummed at the right pitch can make the entire cavern reverberate with an ethereal ring. The Inca priests would use these natural amplifiers to magnify their chants and the sounds of their instruments, building the vibrations until the very air seemed to hum with power. They were not just making sound in a sacred space, they were using sound to make the space sacred, to charge it like a battery. The ultimate goal was to create what we might now call a standing wave or an energy vortex, a stable, swirling field of concentrated vibration. They believed that through the precise combination of instrument, voice, and architectural acoustics, they could generate a sonic structure so stable and powerful that it would act as a temporary portal or a lens, focusing cosmic energy into a specific point in our world. This energy could then be directed to bless seeds before planting, to heal a person whose own energy was out of balance, or to seal a covenant with an apu. In the Inca worldview, a perfectly executed sonic ritual was the most direct way to touch the fabric of the universe, to strum the invisible strings that connect all things, and to momentarily bring the music of the spheres down to earth. Yet for all the power of sound and water, the Inca also turned to the very bones of the earth to find the most potent amplifiers for their rituals. They possessed a profound understanding that specific crystals and minerals were not inert objects, but dynamic substances with unique energetic properties. In a tradition that echoes surprisingly modern concepts of piezoelectricity and energy storage, they selectively used stones like quartz and obsidian as essential components in their sacred technology, believing these materials could interact with cosmic forces in ways ordinary rock could not. Clear quartz, which they likely sourced from the high Andes, was held in particularly high esteem. The Inca observed that this crystal would gather a static charge when rubbed or subjected to pressure, a phenomenon we now understand as the piezoelectric effect. They interpreted this not as simple physics, but as a visible sign of the stone's innate connection to living energy. Its translucency was also deeply significant. They saw it as a physical metaphor for clarity and a conduit for light, believing it could channel pure celestial energy from Hanan Pacha without distortion or impurity. Priests would often hold polished quartz crystals in their palms during solar alignments, using them to focus the sun's first rays onto a specific point on an altar or onto a vessel containing an offering. The crystal acted as a spiritual lens, concentrating the diffuse energy of the dawn into a potent, usable beam meant to supercharge whatever it touched. Obsidian, the volcanic glass forged in the fires of the earth, served a very different but equally vital purpose. Its jet-black, reflective surface was believed to be a portal, not a conduit. While quartz was for channeling energy, obsidian was for containing and absorbing it. The Inca saw its glossy darkness as a void, a receptive emptiness that could hold immense spiritual power without leaking or degrading. Ritual knives, known as tumis, were often crafted with obsidian blades, not just for their physical sharpness, but so that as they were used in sacrifice, they could cleanly sever the spiritual connection of the offering and capture its energy within the blade itself. This charged obsidian would then be carefully stored or used in subsequent ceremonies to impart that stored power elsewhere. Mirrors of highly polished obsidian were also used for scrying, as priests would gaze into their depths not to see their reflection, but to peer past the veil of Pacha into the other realms, using the stone's absorptive quality to reveal hidden energies and messages. The activation of these stones was a ritual in itself. A newly acquired crystal or piece of obsidian was not considered ready for ceremonial use. It first had to be ceremonially awakened and calibrated. This often involved submerging it in water from a sacred spring for a full lunar cycle, allowing it to absorb the vibrational signature of that particular huaca. It would then be exposed to the smoke of specific herbs like cuoa to cleanse it of any lingering previous influences. Finally, and most importantly, it was charged. The stone would be placed in a precise location where it would be struck by the light of a full moon or a solstice sun, while a priest chanted over it, using their breath and intention to essentially program the stone with a specific purpose, whether for healing, for divination, or for energy amplification. This process transformed the mineral from a simple tool into a conscious partner in the ritual. In practice, these stones were integrated into every level of ceremony. A high priest might inlay chunks of quartz into the stone altar of a sun temple to create a grid of energy amplifiers that would hold the solar charge long after the sun had set. A shaman embarking on a visionary journey with huachuma might hold a piece of obsidian to keep them grounded and protected as their consciousness traveled to other realms. Even the common people used smaller, charged stones, placing them in their fields to promote growth or wearing them as amulets for protection. The Inca engagement with crystals reveals a sophisticated material spirituality where the earth itself provided the components for a technology of energy, and where every ritual was a collaboration between human intention and the latent power within the sacred stones of the Andes. Overseeing this entire symphony of spiritual technology was not a task for the common priesthood. It demanded a level of knowledge, purity, and connection that could only be achieved through a lifetime of the most rigorous discipline. This was the sacred duty of the Wilak Umu, the high priest of the sun, and the select few who trained within his inner circle. More than just a religious leader, the Wilak Umu was the empire's supreme master of cosmic energy, a living bridge between humanity and Inti, personally responsible for maintaining the vital flow of power that sustained all life. His training was so demanding, so all-encompassing, that it reshaped his very being, turning him into a finely tuned instrument capable of perceiving and conducting the fundamental forces of the universe. The path to becoming one of these elite priests began in early childhood, often with selection from the noble classes based on both lineage and observed spiritual sensitivity. A boy showing a particular calmness, intelligence, or intuitive connection to nature might be marked for potential training. The real education, however, commenced around the age of 10, when he was taken from his family to live and study within the hallowed confines of the Coricancha or a similar major sun temple. His first years were spent in intense intellectual pursuit, memorizing the complex movements of the celestial bodies. He learned to track the sun's shifting path along the horizon, to predict the phases of the moon with precision, and to identify the heliacal risings and settings of key constellations like the Pleiades. This was not abstract astronomy. It was a practical science of timing, as his entire future role would depend on knowing the exact moment to begin a ritual to maximize its effectiveness in harvesting energy. Parallel to this intellectual training was a profound physical and spiritual purification designed to prepare his body as a vessel. His diet was strictly regulated, avoiding foods believed to generate dense or chaotic energy, such as red meat and heavy spices. He primarily consumed light, sun-fed foods like white maize, certain tubers, and plain water. Periods of fasting were common, used to clear the mind and heighten sensory perception. He engaged in daily meditation and breathwork exercises, not for relaxation, but to consciously awaken and control what they understood as the internal flow of energy, or same. Through these practices, he learned to sense this energy within himself, to direct it, and ultimately to make his own body resonate in harmony with the external cosmic forces he would later command. The most advanced training involved direct, supervised participation in minor rituals, gradually ascending to more significant ceremonies as his proficiency grew. Under the watchful eye of the reigning Wilak Umu, the initiate would learn the precise harmonies of the sacred chants, the exact body postures required to act as an effective conduit, and the intricate steps for preparing and charging ritual objects. His final initiation was a solitary vigil high on a sacred apu, often during a solstice. Left alone for days in the freezing thin air with only minimal provisions, he was required to remain awake, meditating and fasting until the moment of the celestial event. This ordeal was the ultimate test of his physical endurance, mental focus, and spiritual connection. Successfully harnessing the energy of the dawn and reporting a clear vision from the gods confirmed his transformation. He was no longer just a man, he was a wilak umu, a purified channel, ready to assume the immense responsibility of stewarding the cosmic energy upon which his entire civilization depended. Harnessing the cosmic energy was only half the challenge. The Inca faced the equally complex task of preserving this volatile force for times of need. They understood that energy, once gathered, could not be left to dissipate back into the ether. It had to be captured, contained, and carefully stored, much like storing water in a reservoir for a coming drought. To achieve this, they engineered a sophisticated system of spiritual capacitors, transforming everyday objects, architectural features, and even the landscape itself into stable batteries for celestial power. The most common vessels for this purpose were ceremonial drinking cups known as kiros. Far from being simple wooden or gold chalices, these were meticulously crafted energy containers. The exterior of a kiro was often carved or painted with specific geometric patterns and cosmological symbols, not as mere decoration, but as a form of spiritual circuitry. These designs, often depicting stages of the agricultural cycle or celestial animals, were believed to act as a focusing lens, helping to attune the vessel to a particular type of energy, whether for healing, fertility, or protection. The ritual of charging a kiro was a precise operation. After being filled with chicha, the sacred corn beer, it would be held aloft by a priest during a solstice or equinox ceremony. As the first light of the sun struck the liquid inside, the priest would chant, using his voice to set the energy vibrating at a specific frequency. The chicha, now supercharged, was not immediately consumed. Instead, the kiro would be sealed with a special lid and stored in a darkened chamber within a temple. There it would sit, holding its potent charge until a future ceremony required its use, its contents believed to retain the captured solar energy for months, even years. Beyond portable vessels, the Inca designed their very architecture to function as permanent energy reservoirs. The most brilliant example of this is found in the intricate water systems at sites like Tipon and Ollantaytambo. Here, the channels and fountains were not just for irrigation, they were a network for energizing and storing power in water. The water, first activated by its journey from a sacred spring and its movement over specially carved stones, would be directed into quiet, basin-like pools. These pools, often located in secluded, shadowed areas of the complex, were designed not for flow but for stillness. The Inca believed that by allowing the charged water to become perfectly calm, the energy within it would settle and concentrate, transforming the pool into a liquid battery. Priests could then draw from this still water weeks later to bless fields or people, accessing the stored cosmic energy long after the original ceremonial alignment had passed. The natural world itself offered the most powerful and permanent storage solutions. Specific rock formations with unique mineral compositions or magnetic properties were identified as natural capacitors. A large, solitary boulder with a high quartz content, for instance, might be designated as a huaca specifically for its ability to absorb and slowly release solar or stellar energy. The most profound repositories were the sacred mountains, the apus. After a major ritual like a capacocha offering, the energy released was not thought to simply vanish. It was absorbed directly into the heart of the mountain. The immense mass of rock and ice would then act as a colossal planetary battery, slowly radiating that stabilized energy outwards over decades or centuries, influencing the fertility of the land and the stability of the ceque lines for generations. The Inca didn't just build storage containers, they partnered with the earth itself, using its most ancient and stable formations to safeguard the cosmic energy that was the lifeblood of their world. This profound connection to the cosmos was not merely observed or spoken about. For the Inca, it was a force to be physically embodied and enacted through the sacred language of movement. Ritual dance was far more than performance. It was a dynamic and essential technology for energy work, a way for the human body itself to become a conscious, living instrument in the great cosmic symphony. Every gesture, every step, and every formation was a meticulously designed component in a larger system, aimed at aligning individual and collective energy with the powerful forces of the universe. These dances were never arbitrary. Each movement was a form of sacred geometry in motion, a physical prayer designed to trace specific patterns in the air and on the ground that were believed to interact directly with the energy fields of Honan Pacha, K Pacha, and Uku Pacha. Dancers would spend years in training under the guidance of the priesthood, learning not just the steps but the precise intention and spiritual focus behind them. Their training included rigorous physical purification and a controlled diet to ensure their own energy bodies were clear and resonant vessels, capable of holding and directing the immense power they sought to channel without being overwhelmed by it. One of the most significant forms was the circling dance, often performed around a central point like a specially chosen priest, a ceremonial fire, or a sacred huaca like a stone altar. The dancers would move in a clockwise direction, mirroring the apparent movement of the sun across the sky. This was not simply symbolic. The consistent circular motion, combined with the focused intention of the participants, was believed to generate a powerful vortex of energy, a spinning column of force that would draw down celestial power from above and pull up terrestrial energy from below, concentrating it at the central point. This vortex acted as a temporary spiritual axis mundi, a connection between heaven and earth that the priests could then tap into for healing, blessing, or divination. The geometric patterns formed by the dancers were equally critical. Lines of dancers would often move in zigzag patterns, representing lightning and the power of Ilapa, the thunder god, to break through spiritual barriers. Other formations saw dancers creating a living chacana, the Inca cross that symbolized the three realms of existence. By physically embodying this symbol, the dancers became a walking, breathing bridge between worlds, their collective movement stabilizing the connection and allowing for a smoother, more potent flow of energy between the realms. The patterns were a form of active, large-scale sigil magic, where the path traced by the dancer's feet literally mapped out the desired energetic outcome on the earth itself. The costumes and adornments worn were integral to the technology, not merely decorative. Dancers would be adorned with heavy, polished metal discs, often of gold, copper, or silver, strapped to their backs and chests. As they moved in the sun, these discs would catch and flash the light, creating a dazzling display. This was understood to be a method of scattering and distributing the harvested energy into the surrounding environment. Feathers from specific high-altitude birds like condors or eagles were incorporated into elaborate headdresses, believed to lend the wearer the bird's ability to travel between the earthly and celestial realms, making the dancer a more effective conductor. The rhythmic stomping of their feet was not just for keeping time. It was a way of grounding the energy, of pounding it into the earth to fertilize the soil and stabilize the ceque lines. The most powerful dances were those performed in unison by large groups, often the entire community. The synchronized movement of dozens or even hundreds of people, all breathing and stepping in rhythm, created a powerful state of collective resonance. This shared rhythmic experience would synchronize heartbeats and brainwaves, dissolving the sense of individual separation and creating a single, cohesive group consciousness. In this heightened state, the community became one large, living battery, a unified field of intention capable of directing vast amounts of energy toward a common goal, whether it was calling for rain, celebrating a harvest, or ensuring the sun's return after the solstice. Through the sacred art of movement, the Inca didn't just pray for harmony. They physically danced it into existence, weaving their own vitality into the very fabric of the cosmos. Within this intricate cosmology of realms and energies, the Inca recognized that certain animals possessed a unique and powerful spiritual signature, acting as natural conduits between the different layers of existence. They observed the behaviors and habitats of these creatures and saw not random instinct but a divine purpose. The condor, the puma, and the serpent were revered not merely as animals but as living manifestations of cosmic principles, each one a master of its own domain and a key to unlocking a specific type of cosmic energy. Rituals designed to channel their power were among the most sophisticated, treating these animals as essential partners in the work of maintaining universal balance. The mighty condor, with its immense wingspan that allows it to soar higher than any other bird, was the undisputed master of Pacha, the upper world. The Inca saw it as the ultimate messenger to the sun and the stars, a physical embodiment of celestial freedom and perspective. Its ability to ride thermal currents with barely a wing beat was interpreted as a sign of its mastery over the invisible energies of the sky. In ritual terms, the condor's energy signature was one of pure, unadulterated celestial power and spiritual vision. To harness this, priests would incorporate condor feathers into elaborate headdresses and ceremonial robes. Wearing these feathers was not about status, it was a form of spiritual technology. The priests believed that by adorning themselves with the condor's essence, they could temporarily borrow its connection to the heavens, elevating their own consciousness to perceive the flow of cosmic energy from a higher, clearer vantage point during solstice ceremonies. In some of the most profound rituals, a condor might be ceremonially released from a mountain peak at dawn. Its flight path, whether it caught a thermal and soared directly into the rising sun or circled a specific area, was carefully observed and interpreted as a direct message from the gods, a living omen written across the sky that would guide the empire's decisions for the coming season. If the condor ruled the skies, the puma was the absolute sovereign of Pacha, the middle world of the here and now. The Inca observed its silent, powerful stride through the highland grasslands and forests, its unmatched strength, and its role as a perfect, disciplined predator. They saw in the puma the virtues of earthly power, leadership, strength, and strategic action. Its energy was one of focused, terrestrial might and unwavering intention. The Sapa Inca himself was often associated with the puma, and his throne was sometimes referred to as the puma's seat of power. To channel this energy, warriors and leaders would wear pelts or necklaces of puma teeth, not merely as trophies, but to absorb the animal's fierce and commanding presence before going into battle or making critical judicial rulings. In architectural terms, the entire city of Cusco was famously designed in the shape of a puma, with the fortress of Sacsayhuamán forming its head. This was not a whimsical design choice, it was a massive act of geomancy. By shaping their capital in the form of the world's most powerful terrestrial being, the Inca believed they were infusing the entire city with the puma's stable, dominant energy, making Cusco an unconquerable heart of earthly power that would radiate strength and order throughout the empire along the ceque lines. The serpent, often depicted slithering along the ground or curling into a circle, was the revered master of Pacha, the inner world. Its ability to shed its skin was seen as the ultimate symbol of transformation, rebirth, and connection to the generative, cyclical forces of the underworld. Because it moved in constant contact with the earth and often dwelled in holes, caves, and crevices, it was believed to have intimate knowledge of the secrets hidden beneath the surface. The serpent's energy signature was one of healing, fertility, and profound transformation. Rituals aimed at harnessing this energy were often related to agriculture and healing. Priests might bury carved stone serpents at the boundaries of agricultural fields, believing their energy would encourage the seeds to break through their own skins and sprout, drawing up the fertile energy from Pacha. In healing ceremonies, a shaman might use a staff topped with a serpent carving, pressing it against a patient's body to draw out sickness and negative energy, channeling it back into the earth for transformation. The serpent was also a symbol of wisdom and prophecy, and its image was often carved into the stone channels of sacred fountains, representing the flow of healing, underworld energy through the water that nourished the people. The true pinnacle of this practice involved rituals that sought to unite the energy of all three animals, creating a complete circuit that connected all three realms simultaneously. This powerful trinity, condor, puma, and serpent, represented the holistic Inca vision of a balanced universe. A shaman performing a complex healing might wear a condor feather for celestial vision, stand upon a puma pelt for earthly strength and grounding, and hold a serpent-shaped stone to channel healing energy from the underworld. By consciously invoking all three, they became a living embodiment of the three realms, a perfectly balanced conduit through which the full spectrum of cosmic energy could flow to restore harmony where it had been lost. This intricate understanding of animal energy reveals a world view where humanity did not stand apart from nature, but worked in conscious, sacred partnership with it, recognizing that the wisdom to navigate the cosmos was written in the flight of a bird, the stride of a cat, and the transformative journey of a snake. For the Inca, time was not a simple, linear progression of days and seasons. It was a sacred, breathing rhythm, a cosmic pulse that dictated the very flow of energy available to their world. Their ability to harvest celestial power depended entirely on their mastery of this rhythm, and to achieve this, they developed one of the most sophisticated and precise calendar systems ever created in the ancient world. This was not a single calendar, but a complex, interlocking system of astronomical, agricultural, and ceremonial timekeeping that synchronized human activity with the grand movements of the heavens. At its core was a profound understanding that the potency of cosmic energy was not constant. It ebbed and flowed with the celestial cycles, and knowing when to open the channels was the ultimate secret to their success. The foundation of their timekeeping was a dual calendar system, meticulously tracking both the solar year and the lunar months. The solar calendar, crucial for agriculture and the most significant state ceremonies, was divided into 12 months of 30 days each, with an additional period of 5 days to complete the 365-day cycle. Each month was defined by a specific celestial event, such as the position of the sun on the horizon at sunrise or the appearance of a key constellation. Priests used a network of carefully positioned pillars on the hills surrounding Cusco, called sucancas, as a giant stone observatory. By noting where the sun rose or set in relation to these pillars, they could pinpoint the solstices, equinoxes, and every important date in between with astonishing accuracy. The lunar calendar, consisting of 12 synodic months totaling about 354 days, governed the scheduling of more frequent, community-based rituals and agricultural tasks, creating a harmonious, if sometimes challenging, dance between the two systems. The relationship between these cosmic cycles and the energy they believed was available was direct and absolute. They perceived the solstices as moments of immense energetic tension. The June solstice, Inti Raymi, marked the sun's greatest distance from the Earth in the southern hemisphere, a point where its life-giving force was at its weakest. This was not a time of despair, but of urgent, focused action. The grand rituals performed then were designed as a collective effort to pull the sun's energy back toward the Earth, to strengthen its waning power and ensure its return and the subsequent rebirth of spring. Conversely, the December solstice marked the sun at its strongest, a time of overflowing energy that required ceremonies of gratitude and distribution to properly channel this abundance into the land and the people. The agricultural cycle was the most visible and vital expression of this energetic exchange. The timing of planting, tending, and harvesting was not based on weather patterns alone, but on the perceived flow of cosmic power. The heliacal rising of the Pleiades constellation, which they called Colca, was arguably more critical than the solstices for the average farmer. When this cluster of stars reappeared in the pre-dawn sky in June, its clarity and brightness were read as a direct omen. A bright, sharp colca meant the celestial granary was full, predicting a bountiful harvest and indicating that the energy for growth was strong and accessible. A dim, hazy appearance foretold scarcity and weak energy. Planting would be scheduled for shortly after this event, aligning the moment the seed entered the earth with this peak in fertile cosmic influence. Other celestial events created specialized windows for different types of energetic work. The equinoxes, when day and night were in perfect balance, were seen as moments of supreme equilibrium, ideal for rituals aimed at healing, reconciliation, and restoring personal or communal harmony. Eclipses, however, were events of pure terror and potent, chaotic energy. They were interpreted as a moment when the great celestial serpent was attacking the sun or moon, threatening to sever the connection to Honenpacha entirely. During an eclipse, all normal activity would cease. Priests would engage in emergency ceremonies, making loud noises with conch shells and drums to scare the serpent away, and offering fervent prayers to re-stabilize the cosmic order and protect the fragile flow of energy. This intricate dance with the cosmos meant the Inca were never passive observers of time. They were active participants in a living, breathing universe, their rituals serving as the conscious means to tune their world to the celestial frequency. By aligning their actions with the precise movements of the sun, moon, and stars, they believed they could not just predict the future, but actively shape it, ensuring a continuous and harmonious flow of the cosmic energy that sustained their empire season after season, cycle after cycle. Before a priest could even think of stepping into a ceremonial space or attempting to connect with the cosmos, an essential and non-negotiable process had to occur: purification. The Inca understood that working with such potent celestial forces required an absolutely clear and stable vessel, both in the physical space and within the individual. Any lingering negative energy, distraction, or spiritual impurity was seen as a dangerous contaminant like static on a radio frequency. It could distort the connection, lead to misinterpretations of divine messages, or, in the worst cases, attract chaotic and harmful forces. Therefore, their rituals always began with meticulous practices designed to cleanse, protect, and create a sacred container for the immense power they were about to engage. The most common method for cleansing a space was through smoke, a practice known today as sahumado, but this was far more than just waving around burning leaves. The selection of herbs was a science in itself. The most sacred plant for this purpose was Oa, a high-altitude herb believed to possess a powerful purifying vibration. Priests would also use bundles of sweet-smelling grasses and native flowers. The act of lighting the bundle was a small ritual. The fire was often taken from a sacred flame that was kept perpetually burning in the sun temple. As the herbs smoldered, releasing their fragrant smoke, the priest would move in a very specific pattern, typically a counterclockwise direction, to first dispel any existing stagnant energy, followed by a clockwise pass to invite positive, harmonious forces. The smoke wasn't just masking odors. They believed its particles carried the purifying essence of the plants into every corner, physically pushing out negative energies and resetting the vibrational atmosphere of the entire area. This created a blank slate, a neutral and receptive field ready to be programmed with the specific cosmic frequencies of the upcoming ceremony. For the participants, especially the lead priests, internal purification was just as critical as cleansing the space. This often began days in advance with a strict diet that eliminated heavy foods like meat, fats, and spices, which were thought to generate dense, low-vibration energy. They would consume primarily white maize, certain light tubers, and water. Many undertook a period of fasting for 24 hours before a major ritual, not as a test of willpower, but to empty the physical body and clear the mind, allowing their consciousness to become more receptive and their internal energy, or sami, to flow without obstruction. A crucial final step was the herbal bath. They would immerse themselves in water that had been steeped with specific leaves and flowers known for their cleansing properties, such as Munya, Andean mint, and chinchacoma. This wasn't about hygiene. It was a symbolic and energetic act of washing away not just physical grime, but all lingering emotional attachments, worries, and spiritual debris from the mundane world, ensuring they entered the sacred space as a pure and focused instrument. With the space and the participants cleansed, the final step was to actively seal and protect the energetic container. This was achieved through the creation of invisible barriers using sound, intention, and sacred geometry. Before commencing, the presiding priest would often walk the perimeter of the ritual area, chanting a specific, low-frequency tone. The sound itself, focused by their intention, was believed to establish a vibrational fence that would prevent outside energies from interfering. They also used physical objects to mark and fortify this boundary. Small, charged crystals like quartz were sometimes placed at the 4 cardinal points around the ceremonial space. More commonly, they would use canopas, the small stone effigies of animals or crops, positioning them as spiritual sentinels to guard the energy of the ritual. The most fascinating protective technology, however, was the conscious use of geometric patterns. The priests held a deep knowledge of how certain shapes could influence energy fields. While they didn't draw physical circles on the ground, they would mentally project and hold the image of the chacana, the Inca cross, over the entire space. The chacana, representing the 3 realms and the 4 directions, was seen as a symbol of ultimate balance and stability. By holding this geometric pattern in their mind's eye and anchoring it through their focused intention, they believed they could create a stable, sacred cube of energy, a perfectly balanced and protected environment where the upper, middle, and lower worlds could safely meet. Within this consciously created and fiercely guarded container, they could then proceed with the dangerous work of opening portals, calling down cosmic forces, and harvesting energy, secure in the knowledge that both the practitioners and the space were purified, protected, and perfectly prepared for the profound connection ahead. This profound connection to cosmic energy was not reserved solely for grand state ceremonies or agricultural blessings. It formed the very foundation of the Inca approach to health and healing. For them, illness was never just a physical malfunction. It was a symptom of a deeper disharmony, a disruption in the individual's connection to the flowing energy of the cosmos. A sickness of the body was a sickness of the spirit, a block in the flow of Sami, the vital life force. Therefore, healing required more than herbal remedies. It demanded a masterful recalibration of energy, a process where trained priests acted as living conduits to channel celestial forces directly into the patient to restore their natural balance. The training to become such a healer was an arduous path of physical, mental, and spiritual refinement. An initiate, often identified in childhood for their unusual sensitivity or empathy, would apprentice under an experienced master for decades. Their education was holistic in the truest sense. They first had to become master botanists, learning the physical healing properties of hundreds of high-altitude plants from which they would craft poultices and brews. But this was just the beginning. The far more complex study was learning to diagnose energetic imbalances. This involved developing the ability to literally see or sense the human energy body. They were taught to perceive a person's aura, to identify areas where the flow of Sami was weak, stagnant, or had been punctured by trauma or negative intention. This heightened perception was cultivated through years of meditation, fasting, and controlled exposure to the elements, purifying their own bodies to become clearer instruments for perception. The healing ritual itself was a multi-layered operation. It often began in a specially prepared room within a temple or a secluded, naturally resonant space like a sacred cave. The healer would first cleanse the space with kuoa smoke and establish a protective perimeter with crystals or small stone canopas. The patient would be seated and the healer would perform a diagnostic scan, not with their hands but with their focused intention, moving around the patient to feel for cold spots, pressure, or energetic turbulence. Once the problem was located, perhaps a dense, dark patch of energy over the stomach indicating a digestive illness linked to worry, or a tear in the energy field around the head signaling spiritual confusion, the main work would begin. The healer would then call upon the specific cosmic force needed for the remedy. For an ailment requiring purification and fiery transformation, they would align themselves with the sun in Thai, often at midday. They might hold a polished quartz crystal to focus the sunlight, directing a beam of warm, golden energy onto the afflicted area of the patient's body, all the while chanting a specific tone to break up the stagnant block. For an illness rooted in deep fear or requiring emotional release, they might work under the light of the full moon, associated with the goddess Mama Quilla, using a piece of obsidian to gently draw out the shadowy energy and absorb it into the stone for later neutralization. The most powerful healings involve direct physical contact, the healer, having aligned their own energy body with the desired cosmic source, would place their hands on or just above the patient. They would not push energy inward, but rather act as a catalyst. Their stable, high-frequency energy field would create a resonance that encouraged the patient's own dormant somme to recognize its natural, harmonious state and begin flowing correctly again. They described feeling the cosmic energy flow through them as a palpable current, a warming, vibrating sensation which they would then direct with their breath and intention. Following the energy work, the physical application of herbal medicines was the final, crucial step. The healer believed the now activated somme of the patient would interact with the plant's spirit on a deeper level, dramatically enhancing the remedy's physical effectiveness and sealing the energetic repair. A successful healing was seen as a sacred collaboration between the healer's skill, the patient's will, and the boundless, intelligent energy of the cosmos itself. To truly grasp the genius of the Inca, one must look beyond the grand ceremonies and understand that their very architecture was a form of spiritual technology. They engineered their structures not just for shelter, but to actively amplify the cosmic energies they so revered. This is most evident in their legendary stonework. The massive, multi-angled blocks that fit together with such impossible precision were not merely an aesthetic or defensive choice. The immense pressure exerted between these interlocking stones actually generated a weak piezoelectric effect. This means that the crystalline structures within the granite and andesite, when subjected to constant, immense stress, would create tiny electrical charges. While imperceptible to us, the Inca priests believed this subtle, constant hum of energy emanating from the walls served a vital purpose. It actively charged the atmosphere within a temple or sacred space, creating a vibrant field that was more receptive to the larger cosmic forces they worked with. The stones themselves were alive with energy, a foundational battery for their rituals. This intricate stonework also served a more subtle acoustic purpose. The slight gaps and angles between the stones were not flaws, they were designed to filter sound. The architecture naturally dampened chaotic, low-frequency noise from the outside world. The wind, distant conversations, the general murmur of life, while simultaneously amplifying the specific high-frequency harmonics of the priest's chants and the breathy notes of their panpipes. This created a purified sonic environment where the vibrational tools of their rituals could operate at maximum efficiency, their sounds resonating with crystal clarity within the energized space. Beyond the walls, the very shape of their portals was a masterpiece of energetic design. Walk through any major Inca site and you will immediately notice that every single doorway, niche, and window is trapezoidal, wider at the base and narrowing towards the top. This was not a random artistic flourish. The Inca understood this shape to be incredibly stable physically, yes, but they also saw it as a spiritual funnel. The form naturally collects energy from the broader space and focuses it toward a single point. When you pass through a trapezoidal doorway, you are not just moving from one room to another, you are being channeled. The architecture itself guides the flow of both people and the subtle energy around them, preventing the diffusion of power and ensuring it remains concentrated within the sacred environment. This design also mirrors the shape of the Andes Mountains themselves, further grounding the man-made structure in the powerful energy of the natural landscape. Perhaps the most overlooked and sophisticated system was their management of air itself. The Inca had an advanced understanding of what we might now call charged air or aeroions. They knew that stagnant air became heavy and dull, while moving air felt vitalizing. Their solution was a network of hidden ventilation shafts and strategically placed windows that created precise convection currents. At the Coricancha, for instance, small, strategically placed openings near the floor and ceiling would allow cool, dense air from the underground to flow in, while warm, positively charged air from the sun-baked golden walls would rise and escape. This constant, gentle circulation did more than just keep the air fresh. It prevented the potent cosmic energy they harvested from becoming stagnant or trapped. It kept the energy in motion, mixing the terrestrial energy from below with the celestial energy from above, creating a dynamic and balanced atmosphere that was ideal for both the priests and the preservation of charged ritual objects. The very breath of their temples was engineered to sustain the flow of power. Beyond the physical gestures of their hands, the priests employed a sophisticated system of symbolic language, a lexicon of power not spoken but woven into the very fabric of their textiles and etched into their sacred stones. This was not a written language for record-keeping, but a vibrational one for communication with the unseen. The most pervasive and potent of these symbols was the chacana, or Inca cross. Its step design represents the three tiers of existence: Hanan Pacha, K Pacha, and Uku Pacha, with the central hole symbolizing Cusco, the navel of the world and the point through which all energy flows. But its meaning extends far beyond a simple map of the cosmos. Each of the 12 points on the stepped cross corresponds to a month of the year and an astrological sign, while the 4 arms represent the cardinal directions and the elemental principles of earth, water, air, and fire. When a priest traced this symbol in the air or focused on it during meditation, they weren't just drawing a picture, they were using it as a spiritual tuning fork, a geometric pattern that vibrated at a frequency which aligned their consciousness with the fundamental architecture of the universe, opening a clear channel for cosmic dialogue. This symbolic vocabulary was physically manifested in the intricate patterns of their tocapas, the small, geometric squares found on the tunics of nobility and high priests. Modern observers might mistake these for simple decorative motifs, but each arrangement was a dense, coded message and a talisman of power. A specific pattern of interlocking lines might be designed to attract the protective energy of a particular constellation, while a series of stepped diamonds could invoke the generative power of the earth. Wearing a tunic covered in these symbols transformed the priest into a walking altar, their garments actively humming with intentional patterns that amplified their prayers and shielded them from discordant energies. The act of weaving these patterns was itself a sacred ritual, with the weaver, often a chosen Akla, chanting specific tones with each pass of the thread, literally weaving sound and symbol into a single, powerful tool for celestial connection. Yet the ultimate key to unlocking this communication was sound itself, specifically a form of overtone chanting known only to the highest orders of priests. This was not singing in any conventional sense, it was the art of becoming a living instrument. Through years of disciplined practice, a priest learned to manipulate their breath, tongue, and vocal cords to produce 2 distinct sounds simultaneously: a low, fundamental drone from the diaphragm and a high, flute-like harmonic that seemed to float independently above it. The low tone, resonant and earthy, was tuned to the frequency of K Pacha and Uku Pacha, grounding the ceremony and connecting to the ancestral spirits. The high, shimmering harmonic was precisely calibrated to vibrate in sympathy with the energy of Honenpacha, the celestial realm. By sustaining these dual tones, the chanter created a stable sonic bridge between the worlds, their own body acting as the mediator for the exchange. The specific harmonic produced was believed to match the vibrational signature of the cosmic entity they wished to address. A specific pitch for Inti, the sun god, a different, more complex set of harmonics for the Pleiades star cluster. This was their direct dial tone to the divine. The final component of this secret language was perhaps the most mystical, the use of kippahs, the intricate knotted string devices often mislabeled as mere accounting tools. While some kippahs undoubtedly recorded numerical data, a special class of these objects, often made with rare vicuña wool or vibrantly dyed threads, served a far more esoteric purpose. The colors of the cords, the type of knot, its position on the string, and even the spin direction of the yarn itself were all part of a complex, multi-layered code. A red thread might represent the energy of the sun, while a blue one could symbolize the celestial waters of the Milky Way. A figure 8 knot in that blue thread, positioned after a series of vibrational knots on a white string, might tell a story not of harvest quantities, but of a specific cosmic event and the ritual required to harness its energy. These sacred kippahs were not read with the eyes, but with the hands. A priest would run their fingers over the knots, feeling their sequence and form, using them as a tactile mnemonic device to recall the exact sequences of chants, gestures, and offerings for a specific, powerful ceremony, ensuring the ancient frequencies of communication were passed down through generations without ever being spoken aloud. What's truly remarkable is how modern science is now beginning to provide a fascinating lens through which we can re-examine these ancient practices, moving them from the realm of pure myth into a space where spiritual tradition and empirical observation intriguingly converge. Researchers armed with magnetometers and acoustic sensors are venturing into these ancient sites, and the data they're collecting suggests the Inca may have been master physicists of a kind we are only just beginning to appreciate. This isn't about proving their beliefs right or wrong, but rather understanding the sophisticated principles they might have been harnessing, often intuitively, through generations of meticulous observation. Take, for instance, the mysterious electromagnetic anomalies documented at several key huacas. At the Coricancha and certain altars high in the Andes, scientists have detected unexpected fluctuations in the local magnetic field. These aren't random glitches, they often correspond to specific astronomical alignments, like the solstice sunrise. One compelling theory suggests that the immense pressure and friction between the precisely fitted granite blocks, a hallmark of Inca stonework, generates a weak piezoelectric effect. This is a phenomenon where certain crystals, when subjected to mechanical stress, produce a small electrical voltage. The constant, immense pressure within those walls could be creating a subtle but measurable energy field, a permanent, low-level charge that the priests might have perceived and utilized as a tangible manifestation of spiritual power. This would turn the entire temple into more than just a building. It becomes a living battery, its very stones humming with an energy that could potentially influence human consciousness and the local environment. The acoustic properties of Inca architecture reveal another layer of their genius. Engineers and archaeologists have been mapping the sonic landscapes of sites like the cave under the Torreon at Machu Picchu and the labyrinthine corridors of Ollantaytambo. They've discovered that these spaces aren't just accidentally resonant, they are finely tuned auditory chambers, the trapezoidal doorways, the angled walls, the specific types of stone used. All of it works to filter out chaotic, low-frequency background noise while perfectly amplifying and clarifying the high-frequency sounds of human chanting and ritual panpipes. This creates a purified sonic environment where specific harmonic frequencies can be sustained and amplified. We know from modern studies that sustained sound waves at certain frequencies can affect brainwave patterns, potentially inducing states of deep meditation or heightened awareness. The Inca priests, through their overtone chanting, may have been using these architectural amplifiers to generate standing waves of sound that literally vibrated the space and everyone in it, aligning their collective consciousness to a frequency they believed was receptive to cosmic communication. Perhaps the most staggering validation of Inca wisdom comes from the field of astronomy. Their celestial calendar, long dismissed as primitive, demonstrates a breathtaking precision that often aligns with our own modern cosmological understanding. Their unwavering focus on the Pleiades star cluster, which they called Colca, is a prime example. Modern astrophysics confirms that this cluster is not a random grouping but a gravitationally bound family of young, hot stars shining with intense blue light. The Inca practice of using its first annual pre-dawn appearance to predict seasonal weather patterns now has a scientific basis. The clarity with which we see the Pleiades is directly linked to atmospheric transparency. A clear, bright view indicates dry, stable air masses that lead to good weather, while a hazy appearance suggests atmospheric moisture and the potential for poor conditions. Their astronomical observations were a highly accurate form of long-range meteorological forecasting. Furthermore, their reverence for the Milky Way, or Mayu, as a celestial river mirroring their earthly waterways finds a profound echo in modern cosmology. We now understand that the Milky Way is indeed our galactic home, a vast spiral of stars, and that the water on our planet originally came from the cosmic environment, from icy comets and asteroids that bombarded the early Earth. The Inca concept of the heavenly Mayu being the source of all terrestrial water is, in a very real sense, a poetic and intuitive grasp of a scientific truth it would take centuries to prove. Their entire spiritual practice of aligning temples and ceque lines with the dark constellations within the Milky Way shows a sophisticated desire to map their earthly existence onto the grandest canvas of the universe, seeking harmony between the microcosm and the macrocosm in a way that feels surprisingly holistic and advanced. So as we reach the end of our journey into the heart of the Inca Empire, what are we left with? We've explored a civilization that saw the universe not as a cold, empty void, but as a living, breathing entity pulsating with intelligent energy. Theirs was a world where a mountain was a conscious being, a stone could store a sunbeam's power, and a simple melody could tune the human spirit to the frequency of the stars. This wasn't primitive superstition, it was a sophisticated, holistic science of connection, a testament to a people who understood their role not as masters of the natural world, but as active participants in a great cosmic dance. They built an entire empire on the principle of sacred reciprocity, the idea that to receive energy, you must give energy, and developed a spiritual technology so advanced that we are only now beginning to glimpse its genius through the lens of modern physics. Perhaps the most profound lesson we can take from the Inca is their masterful integration of knowledge. For them, there was no separation between science and spirituality, between astronomy and agriculture, or between the individual and the cosmos. Every discipline was a single thread in a grand, interconnected tapestry. The priest was an astronomer, the engineer was a shaman, and the farmer was a philosopher who read the weather in the stars. In our modern world, we've become brilliant specialists, but we often operate in isolated silos, losing sight of the bigger picture. The Inca remind us that true understanding comes from seeing the relationships between things, how the motion of a distant star cluster affects the seed in the soil, and how the sound of a human voice can resonate with the energy of a stone. This ancient wisdom challenges us to reconsider our own relationship with the world around us. While we harness electricity and manipulate atoms, the Inca worked with a subtler kind of power, the energy of intention, of resonance, and of relationship. They teach us that technology isn't just about gears and circuits. It can be the alignment of a doorway to the solstice sun, the specific bend in a canal that structures water, or the harmonic of a chant that alters consciousness. In an age of climate crisis and spiritual disconnection, their model offers a different path forward, one of deep listening, of energetic reciprocity, and of designing our lives in harmony with the natural rhythms of the earth and the cosmos rather than trying to dominate them. The conversation between ancient wisdom and contemporary science is not about proving who was right or wrong. It's a dialogue that can enrich both perspectives. Modern instruments are now detecting the piezoelectric charge in their stonework and the acoustic genius of their temples, giving us a physical vocabulary to discuss what the priests might have called spiritual power. This doesn't diminish their achievements, it deepens our awe for them. It suggests that these ancient rituals were far more than symbolic theater. They were precise operations in a sophisticated science of energy that we are only just beginning to comprehend. The mystery of the Inca endures not because they left no answers, but because their answers point toward a unified understanding of reality that we are still striving to achieve. What do you think? Does this ancient view of a living, energetic cosmos resonate with you? In our search for advanced renewable energy, are we perhaps rediscovering principles that another civilization had already mastered in a different form? We'd love to hear your perspective on these forbidden rituals and what they might mean for us today. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this fascinating conversation going. And if you want to journey deeper into the world's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe.